And welcome back. We're going to take care of a couple of things indoors while we have the ability to do it before we get back out there and start on the what remains of reassembling the engine. And mainly because it's like 8 billion degrees outside right now, and you pretty much evaporate from just walking outside. So what we're going to go ahead and do is put our new exhaust manifold gaskets and go ahead and get our exhaust manifolds and our heat shields in place, because again, we removed the cylinder heads with the exhaust manifolds, and in one case exhaust manifold and heat shield in place, so we should be able to reinstall them with that hardware on there. But as you saw in the previous video, we do have new exhaust bolts that we'll be using. Just to show you that part number again, that's the studded one, and there's 4 of these per, and the studs are the ones that where the 4 corners of the heat shield bolt into. So we'll go ahead and be taking care of that. And of course then we've got the standard bolts for everything else, which I did look these up on mymoparparts.com. It says they are the part number for the exhaust manifold, but if anything's wrong with them, I'll obviously bring you back and let you know. Now, if you remember, we're using Felpro gaskets for our exhaust manifold just because the OEM ones were either unobtainium or just worth their weight in polonium at this point. And what you're looking at on the table is the passenger side cylinder head, but you're seeing it in the reverse because we have it turned around facing to us. So this is actually the what would be the rear of the cylinder head once this is in place, because remember, passenger side, that's their intake side, so it's going to sit on the block like this. So this will be the rear of the exhaust manifold in the front. And these exhaust gaskets, when you open them up, be careful, be extremely careful. It had this situated, and if I can show it to you here, I believe it was this one. Yeah, I believe it was that one right there. Let me turn this around. It had this one situated in the box like this. This edge was right underneath that seam of tape. So when I broke the tape open, I ran my thumb across it to break the rest of the tape loose, and it caught right on the edge of this. And let me tell you, these flat pieces of metal are sharp as a razor. Got a nice cut in my thumb now because of it, so just be careful with it. These gaskets, they only match one per side. You'll notice on the passenger side here we have what looks to be an extra exhaust port, and you'll see that matches up with our gasket here, and it matches the rest of our, looks to be our mounting holes. Because you'll notice if we grab the other gasket thinking that might be the one, you'll notice nothing. Now the holes match up for the exhaust manifold and some of the bolts, but not all the bolts. So it's pretty easy to tell them apart. And let's just show you the torque pattern. So that's the left side pattern. That is the right side pattern. And in both cases, you can see that there. Let me go back and grab that. Now that I've dropped it. You can see they want the exhaust manifold retaining hardware to be tightened to torqued to 18 foot-pounds, and then the nuts that hold the heat shield onto the studs go to 70 inch-pounds. So I'm going to go ahead and get prepped, get a torque wrench and everything out set up to do this, and then I'm going to go ahead and get these torqued, and I'll bring you back and let you know if there were any issues with the hardware. And yes, I will take a little bit of rag and some rubbing alcohol, and I'll just wipe down the face of this real quick, because we have had our nice oily dirty fingers all over these. But I'm going to get and take care of this first one, and then I'll bring you back. Thank you much. And we'll come back. I'm going to do something a little different. Got you on the tripod. Figured we'd kind of do this one live. One thing that you won't see me do, and we'll cover this, I'll cover this in a bit more detail and show you why, is that I'm going to hold off installing the heat shields on these for now, because in my opinion it makes it a bit easier to get the cylinder head reinstalled if you're going to be reinstalling it with the exhaust manifold already attached, because the heat shield hangs down maybe about 1/4 of an inch or so, and kind of becomes an obstacle, in my opinion, to get the head on. Maybe not in the cars so much as it does in the trucks, because in the truck you got to hoist yourself in the engine bay and get yourself situated, and it just adds to an obstacle. In here, we've already wiped the surface down with a little bit of rubbing alcohol just to remove any residual grease and grime. Now, interesting enough, if you're going to be doing this job and you want to do it, replace all the bolts on both sides of the heads. There's your part number again for these studs. You see here. Again, they hold the exhaust manifold down with that end and hold the heat shield down on that end. And that's your part number. Now again, these are for a 5.7. They may be the same for a 6.4, but don't quote me on that. I do know that these do come up for a 5.7. So you're going to need 8 of those studs, 4 per side. You're also going to need 9 of these, 9 of the other bolts, because you have 4 bolts on the driver's side cylinder head and 5 of these on the passenger. Yes, sorry about that. The passenger side head gets an extra 1 of those bolts that is not on the driver's side. And in case you're curious, if you look at your torque diagram, that's the one for the passenger side. Sorry, you got the extra 1 on the passenger side. I think I just said driver. If I did, that was a mistake. So the passenger side one, that's your 9-bolt diagram. And the driver's side one, that's your 8-bolt diagram. Interesting, huh? And every place if you're going to go with factory hardware, and it's just my opinion, I strongly suggest that you do. I know that Dorman and others make bolt kits, whatever you want to use. It's your vehicle, it's up to you. If it were me and I was doing it, because these do have a tendency of breaking, or at least the older revision bolts did, I'm going to go back with factory hardware. Is that every place I've seen that sells Mopar bolts always sells them in individual quantities. So unfortunately, going OEM can get kind of pricey for bolt hardware, but what can I say? One thing that I like to do is grab a heat shield. If you're doing this off the truck, if you're doing it on the truck, it's a bit easier to see. But grab our heat shield like this. I'm just going to pull this cylinder head out of the way. Don't need him quite yet. Place it on top of our exhaust manifold. And you can see real easily which 4 get the studs in it, in case it was missing when you got it, or if you took it apart and you've since forgotten. And then usually what I like to do is just take a silver Sharpie and just make a mark next to each one that's going to get a stud. That way I know. And I know the rest of the bolts in this exhaust manifold now are just standard bolts. Just take a little bit of the guessing game out. When you put these exhaust manifold gaskets on, you'll see that one edge, which is bent up at an angle, kind of like a shield, goes to the top of the cylinder head. Because if you tried putting on the bottom one, you're not going to get that to mate back up with the block. Plus, none of your bolt holes will line up. None of your exhaust ports will line up. Now what you can do is, if you look down here on the exhaust manifold, and the passenger side is the same way, you'll notice one of these has a slot in it where you can kind of just put a bolt in and rest it. You'll notice the other side has a slice in it, again, where it can be used if you had to do this while it was on the vehicle. You can put one bolt hole here to kind of rest the manifold in to situate it. Put your second bolt here to kind of hold it in place, and that'll get it to hold itself in position while you put your other bolts in. But we can use it for our needs, since we know that if we look over, we want the second bolt hole on the bottom. And I'm just going to kind of hand thread this in a couple of turns just to get it to hold, plus it'll hold my gasket in place. And then take our exhaust manifold, loop it down, rest it on top of that bolt. You can see it'll hold itself up there. I don't have to worry about it any longer. It'll kind of hold its own weight, which is nice. And then I can go through, based on our marks, and put our 4 studs in. Again, I'm just going to go hand tight, or just put them in a couple turns by hand. Not going to tighten them yet. Of course, this slotted side over here also got a stud. Now, if I remember correctly, when this is all back on the truck, I may have to back this one back out because it's either this one or this one that gets the oil dipstick tube on the driver's side bolted to it. I believe it's the center one here. It's either here or the one at the end. Okay, right here is another silver mark, so we know that's going to get a stud. And of course our final stud goes up here in our corner. I'm just leaving these loose so that way I can move this exhaust manifold around if I need to. And we need 3 more bolts. Yes, I ordered 10 of these just to have a spare. And let's see here. One's going to go there. One's going to go here. And the final one is going to go up here. Yeah, I know it's kind of a bad angle, but you can kind of still see what I'm doing. Is that just marking our bolts. You know, again, once we knew where our studs were at, then we knew everything else was just a standard bolt at that point. What I like to do is just grab a little hand ratchet, and this is just 1/4 inch ratchet. Not going too absurd with these. It's just following our torque pattern, which is here, and just going through and hand tightening these in place. So we know it says our number 1 is there. It's 1 from the corner. Again, I'm just looking to kind of hand tighten it, not going too terribly far. Number 2, it says it's down at a corner from number 1. That's the one that has the notch in it that you can actually rest the exhaust manifold on. There we go. Number 3 is to the left, according to our diagram. 1 over to the left. Number 4 is up, opposite corner. There you go. You can kind of see what I'm doing there if I hold the exhaust manifold and tilt it a bit more. And then number 5 is far top corner. It's going to be one of our studs. Now, the non-studded bolts are 10 millimeter, and the studded bolts are 13 millimeter. They've got a little bit bigger perch on them because, again, you have to bolt that exhaust manifold to the top of the, heat shield for the exhaust manifold to the top of those studs. That's 5. 6 is the opposite corner, also a stud. Seven, farmost left-hand corner, stud. And then finally 8 is upper corner, upper left-hand corner, also a stud. There. So then what we can do, what I usually like to do is switch back to my bolt. Again, I'm just hand running them down for now, because just like when you're torquing it, even though we're hand torquing, some of these will loosen back up. Again, just getting them hand tight, following our torque sequence. 4, Switch over to our 13 millimeter. 5, upper corner left. 6, lower corner, I'm sorry, upper corner right, lower corner right, from the camera view that is, from the end. 7, lower corner left. 8, upper corner left. Okay, now that we've got that in there, remember we need 18 foot-pounds on each of these fasteners. You can see that there. We're set to 18 foot-pounds, and yes, I do use a digital torque wrench. So I got a good deal on them in the last round of Christmas sales. Okay, so again, following our torque pattern, bring that back in the camera view. I'm going to start torquing these down to 18 foot-pounds. You'll hear the torque wrench start to rapidly beep as we get close. And you hear that that steady tone means we've hit our target. So now I'm going to go to number 2. Okay. I'm going to go to number 3. Number 4. Okay. Number 5, we need to change out to a 13 millimeter socket. Yes, I am using an extension on my torque wrench. It's fine. An extension will not alter your torque readings on the torque wrench. In case anybody's curious or wants me to, I can post a link to a video that'll show you plenty of examples, or actually a pretty good example, of where a shop put about 6 feet or so of extensions together, torqued down a lug nut on a wheel per the torque wrench, and then went back and took all the extensions off and double checked the torque on the lug nut, and guess what? It was right within spec. Now if you use an extension on an impact gun, try to break something loose, yeah, you definitely will lose some power. Okay, now our final one, number 8. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around, I'm going to change out to my original 10 millimeter, following our torque sequence, and I'm going to go around, I'm going to double check it, because you're going to find out that as you get these things torqued around, they will seat and they will loosen up slightly, like that one right there. Remember, it was about 18 the first time we hit it, number 1, and then when we had it torqued and went back and checked, it started reading torque at about 10 foot-pounds. So had we not double checked, that one would have settled and been wrong. Yeah, and I realize this is a bad camera view. I can't tilt the cylinder head to get you a good view in there and be able to hold this cylinder head and get accurate torque at the same time. But I am following the torque pattern that you see down there on the paper. That one started torquing about 12 foot-pounds. So it just gives you an idea of about how they can settle in and actually get loose as you're torquing them. Which is why it's generally a good idea to go back and do a second round. Okay. And for good measure, it's going to be a little bit of overkill. Okay, that one's on the money. Number 5, number 6, and I'm sure that this video, since I'm showing me actually torquing these and going through a whole torque sequence, that someone out there is probably not going to like what I'm doing, and that's fine. I'm sure it'll generate a fury in the comment section below. But that's it for that one. Like I said, you saw we went over there and we checked our torque 3 times. To recap on that, these are the standard bolts. You'll need 9 of these, and this is on a 5.7 Hemi. You'll need 9 of these if you're going to do the whole job. And you'll need 8 of these, which are your studs. Again, 4 per side if you're going to be doing the both sets of heads. And of course, yes, just a reminder, I did order 10 of those to have a spare in case it were needed. And we torqued everything to 18 foot-pounds per all data. Now, one thing I didn't do is I didn't order the nuts for the end of the studs that bolt the heat shield on. And I'll show you these. I had a bunch of these left over and they fit the thread pitch. They're M6 stainless steel fasteners. And they fit the thread pitch just fine. It's the same ones I used on the 6.4 when we were working on the 2500. And so I'm going to use these here. No sense ordering bolts that I didn't need. And I will also be coating these studs in some copper anti-seize once we go to put these bolts on. Again, just making sure that they're easy to remove for the next guy that comes down the pipe. I'm going to show you what I was talking about earlier. We put this heat shield on its studs. There we go. You'll see here, this one's not too bad because it's, you know, not been bent into quite position yet. But I'm going to collapse the tripod. You're going to go for a little bit of a ride so I can show that to you. But you can kind of see how low that lip of this heat shield can hang and kind of get in your way if you're trying to put these cylinder heads back on the block. That's why I'm going to leave these off, because you can remove this exhaust manifold and replace your broken studs and everything while the heads are still on the block. You can also get these off and put these back on while they're on the motor. So not having them there just gets rid of the obstacle and makes this job a bit easier. And then we'll put the heat shields on, you know, once we actually have the heads on and have everything torqued down and, you know, verified that all our valves and everything are actuating like they're supposed to once we finish up the front timing cover. And this will probably be one of the last things we do prior to starting it, is just putting our heat shields back in place. So other than that, that was it. Again, hopefully it made for something of a little bit of a different of a video. I'm going to post this, again, like I said, by itself. Not too terrible of a job, even if you had to do this on the vehicle. Obviously, it's a bit easier here because we have free access to all of our hardware, but you can do this on the vehicle. I did do the driver's side cylinder head. I dropped the exhaust manifold while it was on the vehicle, just because the 6.4 is actually a little bit even tighter of a space on the driver's side, and it was actually easier to drop this off while it was in the truck and then put the head on without the exhaust manifold and then put the manifold on after the fact. If you do it though, you're just going to need a lot of extensions and wobbly bits, and to be able to kind of get around and get the angles that you need on these fasteners. But this one, again, it wasn't too bad to remove the cylinder heads with the exhaust manifolds attached. That's why we're going to go ahead and attach them now and then drop them in. These Felpro gaskets seem nice. They look and feel just like the OEM gaskets did. I have no problem with them so far, but obviously if we do, I'll bring it back and we'll do an update. So that's it at this point. Next time that you see these, we'll hopefully be getting them. I'll clean up the surfaces again, obviously, along with the block surface, but hopefully the next time you see these, we'll be getting these in place, getting them dropped in, so we can do our cylinder head install and start buttoning our engine up. At least that's the game plan. But with that being said, I'll let you go. If you haven't subscribed yet and you found this information useful, please take a couple of minutes, a couple of moments to do so. It's just a couple of clicks of a mouse. We are right on that doorstep of that milestone in 1,000 subscribers, and that's our goal, is at the end of the year to be at 1,000. Hopefully before the end of the year we can get to 1,000, but that's our goal for this year. Other than that, I'll let you go, and I'll talk to you later.